Welcome back, ladies and gents. I'm Hatz, your friendly neighborhood hat man. So here we are for part 2 of my journey into Gypsy Rose, metaphorically, not literally. I've no desire to become the latest victim of one of social media and reality TV's greatest scams, or be murdered brutally in my sleep. Firstly, a quick thank you for all the support in the comments on the last video. I really do appreciate it. Secondly, I'd just like to take a quick moment to clarify, though, that this series I'm doing is basically a noob's journey of discovery of a reality TV horror cow. I appreciate the suggestions on where to go after I've gone through, reacted to, and commented on this part of the backstory from the prison confession series of Gypsy Rose. I'm sure there is a lot that hasn't been made common knowledge, but for now I kind of have a blueprint on the way I'd like to do this, and a big part of that, but for now at least, involves effectively blind reacting to what I'm seeing first, basically the same thing that most people will see, and then afterwards going into all the nitty-gritty of what has been discovered afterwards, things like the FOIA requests that have been covered by other channels. It's not that I'm dismissing them out of hand, it's just that I'm not ready to get to that and don't want to have my own opinions shaped or influenced potentially by others and what they've discovered. What I'm reviewing first is probably what 99% of people will see in the public domain. After I'm caught up on that, that's when I'll start to dive into all of the discoveries that some more tenacious people have made that don't fall in with the existing story of Gypsy Rose, as has been crafted to portray her as an almost total victim to elicit sympathy. So with all that said, let's get in the next episode of the Prison Confessions and more of the backstory on how she ended up there, and the story in her words of how evil her mother was, as all too often corroborated by sympathetic family members and only occasionally challenged.
I said, I am concerned this child has been kidnapped.
She told me to use my diapers while I was on my period. He sent me a text that said, tonight be the night that we run away together. Nobody knows that I even had a addiction before prison, let alone in prison.
Now you can never take my soul.
Your soul is mine.
I feel like I need to add more witty clips in these to take away from the perennial pity me bullshit that surrounds Gypsy like a cloud. A nice little teaser for what's awaiting me in this sojourn down Victim Boulevard, and basically, give me more sympathy! Last episode was establishing that Mommy apparently was a major control freak and sought attention at the expense of her daughter's health, who also, conveniently, was sexually abused for a time when she was around her grandfather. I mean, what else could she possibly throw up as a shield? Is she going to start passing herself off as Jewish next? And the slightest criticism screams that everyone who doesn't simp for her is anti-Semitic. I mean, I'm going to assume she hasn't done that yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if she does try that one day.
Tomorrow is my parole hearing, and I don't think I will sleep at all, because everything has led up to this moment, and it's finally here. People have called me a victim, they've called me a murderer, but there's so much more.
Gypsy spitting facts? People calling her a victim and a murderer? Yes, I guess you are, in fact, both. There being more to you isn't necessarily a good thing, since pretty much all that's been demonstrated has been that you're a permanent victim, liar, grifter, and a coward. So I have to say it again, probably should for any new watchers. But you had years when you could have told someone the things that you say your mom was doing to you, and you spent months making detailed preparations to have her murdered. Even then, you got a guy with major mental issues to do it for you. And while he rots in prison forever without any prospect of parole, you're out here, in the real world right now anyway, making bank as a reality TV whore and a pseudo-influencer. Just please, when all of this comes to a screeching halt, don't try to stay relevant by, I don't know, trying to make extra income or garner attention as something like an OnlyFans thought. Please, God, no.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
The Gypsy Blanchard that first entered inside this institution, she was so just naive and scared. I didn't go to school. I didn't have responsibilities. But today, I am responsible for myself. I got my education in prison. I want to show that I have every capability of standing on my own 2 feet, and I'm not broken. I'm stronger than that. I'm a survivor.
Like many victims of many unfortunate situations, she's unbroken, she's stronger, she's a survivor. You know, I hate the way that term is used nowadays, and she's a perfect example of exactly why. First, she could have gotten out of her situation at practically any time. Secondly, when she had those opportunities, she stuck around for, I don't know, convenience, familiarity, so she would have to take responsibility for herself, whatever. Thirdly, you plotted and conspired for months to murder your mother while she was asleep, no less, and let someone else take the blame for it. You would have been a survivor, in my opinion, if you'd escaped and evaded your captor and the threat facing you. Hell, even if you'd killed your mom in a struggle or a heat-of-the-moment confrontation, then you could say you were a survivor. You basically had your mother assassinated. That's not surviving anything. That's premeditated murder, which you planned.
I'm here on a ship in Rhode Island. Worked 28 days on the ship, 28 days at home. I remember when Gypsy was young. I was going a lot. It was just hard to deal with. I mean, I cared how they survived.
I don't think my mom ever wanted me to have a relationship with my father. She told me that he was abusive. She said that one night he picked me up by the neck and threw me towards her across the room. That never happened.
I didn't know what she was telling Gypsy. That's kind of scary to think. You know, I didn't know that. That was the problem. I didn't know that.
Possible daddy issues, and if so, almost certainly instigated by Dee Dee herself. It's a douche move for any parent to try and weaponize their kids against the other parent, but it's not that unusual, and Dee Dee having abandonment issues seems like a dead, pardon the pun, certainty. Smitten with a younger man, gets married, has a kid, guy has second thoughts and wants his freedom, so goes out for a pack of cigarettes and never comes back. A tale as old as time, and seen millions of times around the world. I mean, still relatively common or not, I can't help but view this as Gypsy recounting this as being just another case of none of this was really my fault. Mommy kept me away from Daddy and didn't want me to have anything to do with him, so she told me he would hurt me. She says it never happened, but while she's saying her dad never did it, I suppose the question is whether those conversations ever happened at all. I mean, after all, the only other witness is dead, so we just have Gypsy's word to further vilify Mommy Dearest.
Some of these manipulative behaviors that Dee Dee practiced were probably learned in her childhood.
Dee Dee was my mom's favorite. She enjoyed being the little princess. When Dee Dee was growing up, she had like a heart murmur, and my mom kept her from a lot of stuff. You know, she wouldn't be able to go play outside. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe that's part of where Dee Dee had got that, because she was the sick kid.
From victim to villain in 30 seconds with the psychologist and the family suggesting childhood upbringing may explain away what Dee Dee did. Or allegedly did. It's not it's my trauma. Or if legit, history repeating itself. As a kid, she sees all of this attention being given to her mom, and maybe some special treatment given to her because of her slightly more fragile health, and it's just ingrained. Attention for the parent and an easy ride for the kid.
I thought my mom was taking care of me, but now looking back on it, I was not taught certain things. My mother and I used to take baths together. We slept in the same bed together. And then I hit puberty and I had got my first period. I was freaking out, and she didn't tell me about pads or tampons. So she told me to use my diapers while I was on my period.
Right. Incest baths and period diapers. Why did I think this was a good idea? Or at least a good idea to do this sober? 1 minute. Better. And that bath water? Is that a cat in the bath? And that water? Yes, I know I already said that. But why does it look like swamp water?
So, how old again were you at this point?
I was 13 years old when I came to prison. I still never was taught about a tampon. And finally, this woman taught me about tampons. It was like a whole new world opened up to me.
I think Dee Dee tried to keep Gypsy as young as possible, as long as possible, as a way to control her and keep her dependent.
Welcome to prison. This is your cellmate, and she's going to show you the ropes and teach you about periods and associated sanitary products. Hell, setting aside that this is Gypsy Rose and she vacillates between extreme victimhood, chronic dishonesty, and parental assassinations, infantilizing someone isn't something I've never heard of before. One or more parents who can't cope with the idea of a child growing, or strange people with fantasies about someone else where they convince themselves that they're the only one who can take care of said person that they're fascinated with. Shameless self-plug, there's an entire playlist on this channel featuring a guy who did exactly that. We miss you, James Robert Clark III. Please come back to us.
My mother and I were living in Slidell, Louisiana when Hurricane Katrina was. My mother and I stayed at the shelter for at least a month and a half. And when we went back to the apartment complex, there was just nothing but devastation. My mother had talked to a woman that was a worker at the shelter. So she set it up to where my mother and I could be life flighted to Springfield, Missouri. We landed on the rooftop of St. John's Hospital. And I just remember thinking, okay, we're at a hospital. This is normal. You know?
I mean, there's not much to say about the post-Katrina needing to stay in a shelter for an extended period and all that. I mean, it's something that wasn't particularly unique for a lot of people at that time. Was a common thing, unfortunately. Bad luck to be caught up in Hurricane Katrina, but very fortunate to be able to play that disability card and get airlifted the hell out of there, while thousands of others were left behind to fend for themselves and live in sheltered accommodation and school gymnasiums, I guess. And right back to a hospital for some special care and attention. Remarkable coincidence.
Springfield, Missouri is a really great place, particularly for healthcare. The first time that I met Dee Dee and Gypsy, Dee Dee was verbally loving in front of me to Gypsy. Physically, there was some hugging and hand-holding and those type of things. Nothing unusual.
Before the appointment, she's like, now whenever it comes to the reflex test, make sure you keep your legs super still. And she would put her arm around me and hug my shoulder, or she would squeeze my hand. That was the signal to shut up.
Gypsy taking us through what seems like typically controlling and manipulative behavior from Mom, being prepped on how to behave in front of the good doctor and give nothing away, and if she was to go off script, then a firm squeeze to remind her what she should be doing. Meanwhile, Deer acknowledges he was observing their interactions and presumably any body language, and gives no indication that he saw anything untoward at the time. Does that mean it either wasn't happening, or is he blind as a bat? So I guess the question now is, who do you believe? The doctor and his professional observations, assuming that he was alert and on the ball, or Gypsy, as she describes what is, unfortunately, a textbook control method?
The way that Gypsy acted, wearing princess dresses, the way she talked, the things that she referenced that she liked to do, were like a kindergartner.
When my mother and I moved to Missouri, I would have been 14 years old, and she was telling me that I was 12 years old.
Dee Dee was pretty clear that Gypsy had a history of cancer, asthma, some sort of muscular disorder.
My mother would often tell other people and tell me that I would only have a life expectancy of 7, and then it was 15, and then it was 20. I think to some degree I knew it was a facade. However, I didn't know the malicious intent behind the facade.
Obviously, everything was structured to make it seem like she was a younger child, but that can go a couple of ways. It could easily be Mom trying to keep her baby more baby-like, or it could equally be Gypsy herself being very childish and not wanting to grow up. Either way, though, it makes more sense if you're going to orchestrate scams to try and make the focus of the charity seem like a poor, innocent child and tug on those charitable heartstrings. I'm still somewhat baffled at this point why the doctor's reciting all these ailments that he's being told she has, but seems to skirt around what he did to verify any of it. I mean, maybe I'm just nitpicking?
Dee Dee didn't have the medical records.
Oh, well, guess I should just wait a moment.
She said they're gone because it was chaos down in New Orleans right after Katrina. So Dee Dee became the sole place for information. Probably the biggest concern I had was just this history of cancer. Dee Dee could not give either the diagnosis nor really the length of treatment that she had been on. That was unusual. And to me, that was a red flag.
So those pesky medical records were conveniently lost in a hurricane, which is theoretically possible, and Dee Dee is now the only source of information. Again, not completely implausible, assuming, of course, that she's reliable, which she's not. But there'd be other avenues to explore, different medical facilities that weren't affected, doctors who'd apparently been involved in her care and treatment in the past, so why not contact them and try and get some of the background? I guess there was some excuse given and it wasn't challenged.
So the question is, at what point do you trust the parent to be accurate with the information? Can I trust what Dee Dee's telling me?
Okay, another one where I probably should have waited and got the answer. But Doc, you're going to trust someone who knows everything but can't give specifics? It's kind of like what I said in my last video. In my experience, parents with kids who have complex health needs often keep a copy of the medical records themselves. So if they do need to go to a medical facility, and it's a different one to where they usually go, they have the records to hand rather than have to wait however long it takes for them to be uploaded, transferred, or whatever from the regular one to the current one.
Gypsy calls me Nona because she's just like a grandchild to me. We have lots of memories. We have pictures. We have notes that Gypsy wrote to me. I love you very much. Great big hugs. Signed, Love Gypsy Rose.
How does it make you feel reading that?
Special.
You miss her?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
She probably should feel special given she's alive and well and apparently an ardent Gypsy defender, but I've got no idea who she is, and given my track record in this video so far, I'm pretty sure the explanation will probably follow in the very next clip. But I guess she wasn't important or influential enough to make a difference. Pity.
I met Dee Dee and Gypsy when our emergency room doctor brought them from the Katrina hurricane to Springfield. Gypsy was so friendly. She could talk to anyone. We were told that her dad was out of the picture because he was a bad man. And obviously that's not a true statement.
God damn it, I knew I should have just waited for the explanation. But in fairness to this woman, and me rowing back a bit, she got scammed. She knows she got scammed, and she's annoyed that she got scammed, as most people would be. Good. Not that she got scammed, but good that she knows it, and is angered by it, and,
Let the hate flow through you.
I heartily condone that.
When Dee Dee and Gypsy came up from New Orleans with no concrete medical records previously, I have to assess the information that Dee Dee's giving me. But she didn't remember the cancer diagnosis. So we tested, test came back normal. We felt like there was no evidence of cancer. Well, maybe she's in remission. Then when Dee Dee said she's got a muscular problem, at least from the outset, it looks like, well, maybe she does. She's in a wheelchair. As I examined her, there wasn't real obvious things that suggested muscular disorders. So I was really frustrated. And so that's when I referred Gypsy to see a neurologist.
Okay, so despite the bullshit that was being fed and there conveniently being no medical records available to corroborate anything, it seems like the good doctor here did at least try to investigate the conditions he was being told about. Huzzah! And I guess it would kinda make sense that he'd get away with doing that because it was providing focus and attention on Gypsy and her mother and extending that sympathetic rift.
I'm a pediatric neurologist. She came with multiple medical conditions, but Dee Dee was not willing or able to give details about each one of the diagnoses. So I said, let's do new tests. We did an MRI of the spine and the brain. When I got the result, they were all normal. Gypsy Rose didn't have cerebral palsy. Her muscles are good. Her strength is good. And I think that she should be able to walk. And then I tried to have her move and stand her up. And lo and behold, she was able to stand up.
Hallelujah, praise Jesus, praise the Lord, she can walk. Hallelujah, she can walk. Okay, no obvious physical problems. Scans come back as normal, so she should be able to stand, and when pressed, she can. I know this isn't new to most people, including me. I mean, after all, I have seen the docu-series, I think it was on Netflix or wherever it was. But yeah, when it's shown up that she's relatively normal in a physical sense and the disability grift is on the verge of collapse, There's some shift in narrative that just simply has to happen, either to protect the scam or reboot it for a new target audience. I know I'm preaching to the choir for a lot of people watching, but this is my first proper run through analyzing this, and I kind of want to avoid the spoilers. So for now, please, let me have my Darth Vader
I am your father
moment.
Dr. Flasterstein said that your MRI results were normal. He said that he asked you to stand up, and lo and behold, you stood up.
I don't recall that ever happening. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm just saying that I know for damn sure if I would have stood up in any office, I would have had my ass chewed out.
So, is the doctor lying, or are you lying, Gypsy? My money goes on you. Partially, if not entirely. That phrase, I don't recall. Yes, that's a favorite of politicians and legal speak. Not an admission, not a denial, just claiming you don't remember so you don't have to and can't, technically, explain. Now, I'm just spitballing here, but purely on my gut instinct, I think she did stand up. I think she deferred to the authority in the room, who was the doctor, and either her mother wasn't there for a few months, or she was caught off guard and she reacted to the doctor telling her to do this rather than her mother. Whatever the circumstance were, I think she stood up, despite what she claims. I mean, I could be right, could be wrong. I'm just speculating on the train of thought going through my brain. But it all ends up at the same destination. Lying bitch.
Dee Dee was not happy and got upset, took Gypsy by wheelchair, and she stormed out of the room. Already I was suspicious based on the results of the MRI, the imaging studies, that this is Munchausen by proxy. So why didn't I report it to family services? You cannot call family service for a suspicion. You have to have it proven.
You can't really report suspicion, but I feel like why would you take a chance of being wrong when you could be right?
Maybe I should have reported in any case and got a negative response.
Hindsight is a great thing, including for people like me watching this unfolding for the first time. It's nice and easy to make judgments on what you see or have seen when it's all been processed and categorized in a nice, presentable manner. Like I said, I'm trying to avoid too many spoilers from what I see now in the recommended videos or comments, because I want to get kind of caught up first on what everyone was presented with publicly, and then start diving into the debunking part of it. So where the doctor here is concerned, look, I don't know exactly what the process is when it comes to family or social services referrals. He says you can't make that call based on a suspicion. You need proof. Well, maybe that is the case there, or maybe you need some evidence at least to support the allegation rather than a mere suspicion. Had he made that call, it probably wouldn't have made any difference. Dee Dee was obviously a consummate liar, and by extension, either from learned behavior or direct coaching, so is Gypsy. Short version, any investigation would have died a quicker death than Dee Dee when the social workers were presented with some well-rehearsed stories and Gypsy did absolutely nothing to disprove her supposed disabilities.
In one instance, Dee Dee did seek the assistance from an ear, nose, and throat specialist for excessive drooling, which is a common problem in those with cerebral palsy.
My mom put Orgel on my mouth. It would numb my mouth and make me drool.
Of course, Gypsy did not have cerebral palsy and ultimately had her salivary glands removed. And that can have complications, like tooth loss.
After surgery, I had more and more of my teeth removed. And now I have 16 teeth left. Today, my dentures don't fit in properly, and I'm not able to get a new set because I'm in prison.
I suppose this is one of those areas where it's on the record that Gypsy had the procedure done, and unnecessarily. The subsequent loss of teeth, as the doc says, being a side effect of a lack of saliva production, or at least something that would be exacerbated by it. I'm sure the immense amounts of candy and sugary drinks that Gypsy was eating while not brushing her teeth only made it about, 1,000 times worse. I guess while some blame can be levied on Mom, there's also a massive amount of responsibility on Gypsy herself for all the crap she was putting into her mouth before and after she had the ability to drool taken away, because she didn't brush her teeth, simply put. But for PR purposes, it's totally Mom's fault. Totally. 100%.
When Dee Dee and Gypsy came up from New Orleans, there were a number of things that Dee Dee did manipulating the community. One was Habitat for Humanity.
The house was made custom to suit her needs. Let's include a wheelchair ramp. Let's include bigger doors. Let's make this a home that they could really, really call their own.
I was so happy that I cried. because all my life I never lived in a home that was ours.
That house was essentially an extension of the love and care the community gave to this pair. But it was all a scam.
The gift from Habitats for Humanity of a new house for Gypsy and her mom is probably right up there at the pinnacle of the scam. Yeah, sure, checks and cash donations all add up, but an entire house custom built and given out for free? Yeah, that's pretty bad to be scamming an entire house with the thousands of dollars and man hours invested in building it. Dee Dee might have been the architect of the scams, but the simple fact is, Gypsy literally knew what was going on and was entirely complicit in it, because she could have taken it down at any time and didn't.
It's so easy to live here, and it's so peaceful.
I remember my mom had gave me this little glass house, and she said, one day this will be real. And now it finally is.
Looking back on that interview, I was coached before we had filmed for that. And I remember my mother telling me, this is going to be our happily ever after. Kind of staying with the fairy tale theme.
It's going to be a recurring theme that most of what gets said is going to be one side of a story. That's not to say that Dee Dee didn't do what Gypsy claims, but at the same time, it's very easy to downplay your own involvement in things and put all the blame on the dead person. Well, like I said a moment ago, Dee Dee might have been the architect, but Gypsy's confirming that she was all in with the lies, while simultaneously saying it wasn't her fault and she was made to do it.
Over time, my nurse came to me with 3 documents, and on these 3 separate documents, she had 3 separate birthdays. The day and month were the same, but the year was different. And my nurse said, I'm now really concerned. I'm getting chills actually thinking about this.
Why are you getting chills?
I'm experiencing the emotions that I had when it was oh my gosh, there might be something really bad going on.
That hindsight thing, back again, can also be good at presenting yourself in a better light. So you've got documentation that clearly indicates some of the fraud going on. You didn't do anything meaningful about it, didn't sound the alarm, but now years later, you've got chills, they're multiplying, and you're flashing back to the moment where you thought something was very wrong. I guess Gypsy's not the only one who wants to downplay her actions or inaction.
Why didn't you just stand up? Why didn't you just tell someone what was going on? And I'm honest with them, and I tell them I was scared of my mother.
Oh, how very convenient. I'm sure there's an element of truth to that. Maybe mom would have shouted, or maybe as part of that coaching was that, you have to keep the story in line or they'll take everything away from us and they'll take you away, put you in a foster home and put me in jail. But anyway, mommy bad, Gypsy sad. That's basically the narrative, right?
Over time, as I begin to look at all these diagnoses and the documents with the wrong birth dates, I called the Missouri Department of Family Services. And I said, I am concerned this child has been kidnapped.
Wow, you did do something, Doc. Congratulations. But kidnapping? What? Seems a bit random, but okay. I suppose it's something.
I remember DFS coming to my house. They kept my mother in the living room, and they talked to me alone in my bedroom. And they asked me, did I have bruises on me? And I showed them, no, I don't. And they're like, who is that woman in the other room to you? Is that your mother? And I'm like, yes, ma'am. I could hear them talking to my mom. Told her to shut the F up at one point, and it really shook me up because at this time I was very close with my mother.
Yeah, okay, so lies on top of lies, which I'm going to assume were pre-rehearsed in case of questions being asked. But this is like the perfect opportunity to get out. And instead, you know what, let's just keep the scam going right to the point where matricide seems like the best option.
How do we know that these doctors aren't saying all this of these accounts of them doing all the right things by me, but I don't recall any of it? Am I lying? Or is it that they're just trying to cover their own asses?
Well, that's the question I've already asked, and maybe something that gets answered later or in the FOIA request, but like I said, I'm avoiding spoilers for now. Either way, I think they're both lying. Her because it's just who she is and her acceptance of guilt is always laced with being a victim, and them because it brings their professional competence into question.
I wish I could even say that I entertained the diagnosis of Munchausen's by proxy and dismissed it, but it didn't enter into my brain.
Wow, an admission of failure. Well, color me surprised. I wasn't expecting that. But at the same time, I'm also kind of not surprised because it seems like everyone who's ever doubted or not entertained the abuse or Munchausen's angle has become a convert to the Gypsy Rose Total Victim Program.
With my mother, it was a hot and cold relationship. It was either very affectionate because I was very submissive and obedient, or I was either rebellious and I would be punished for it.
Oh yes, a rebellious child. Boo fucking who. Let's give her special treatment and compassion because she was punished for rebelling, just like about every other kid and teenager who ever walked the planet.
My mother would apply for different wish-granting organizations, like Make-A-Wish Foundation, and take me on these trips to Disney World.
If I knew there was a Disney trip coming up or something, I'll give you a couple $100 so she can get some souvenirs and stuff like that. For her 18th birthday, when I did call her and asked Dee Dee to tell Gypsy happy birthday, she's like, don't tell her that. I'm like, well, it's her 18th birthday. I mean, she's 18. It's a big deal. She doesn't know she's 18.
I think that my mother told me I was turning 14. I took it at face value, and it almost seeming like I was aging backwards.
Oh, the Make-A-Wish con alongside the house is probably one of the most well-known scams in this whole thing. And it makes sense to keep presenting Gypsy as being a child because once she turns 18, then boom, the gravy train comes to a screeching halt. Her claiming not to be aware of her real age, that just stinks. Maybe when you're 4 or 5, it might hold merits. Don't remember, or you can be coached as to not knowing how old you are. You might not remember how old you were your last birthday if you're kind of like told repeatedly, no, it wasn't your 5th birthday, it was your 4th birthday. Stuff like that. You could confuse a kid, a little kid. But when you're in your teens, you are going to remember your previous birthdays and how old you were supposedly turning. You're not going to be celebrating your 16th birthday one year, and then the next year you come to celebrate your birthday, and it's like, no, it's your 14th birthday. It's like, no, it wasn't. No, it's not. I was 16 last year. That's not going to hold water. So that's a weak-ass and dumb-ass lie, Gypsy. As a young child, maybe I would give you some credibility in that claim, but by the time you're turning 18, to be told you're actually turning like 14 or 15, bullshit. Bullshit.
My mother had just started a Facebook profile, but she never let me get on Facebook. At this point, my mother had got the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society to gift me a laptop for Christmas. My mom thought that I was looking at the Barbie website, Disney website, these very kid-oriented websites. But one of the first things I did was make a Facebook account behind her back.
Scammed laptop from the phantom cancer, and like a household cat that escapes in the garden for a few moments, now Gypsy has access to the outside world and a whole slew of people who she can potentially interact with and now create her own narrative. With a whole life of living from lie to lie, whatever could she do with this new audience and the ability to shape her own story and benefit directly and personally? I wonder.
Around this time, my mother took me to a sci-fi convention called Vision Con.
Hey, Gypsy!
And one night during the convention, I'm in my wheelchair, and my mother's a few feet away, and this guy bumps into me, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you, I'm sorry. And I'm like, it's no problem, it's fine. A few days later, he found my secret Facebook profile. I accepted his friend request, and his name was Dan. A lot of it was talking with him about movies, TV, music, common interests. But then there was that part of it that was kind of sexually charged.
Ah, the internet. That place where everyone can get their horn on, even fake cripples and nerds. I'm sure it was a stimulating Conversation between the infantilized girl living a lie and the comic book nerd from the convention. It's something I hope never to read.
We would trade messages back and forth for a while. And slowly, after a few months, I started to tell him more and more about my home life. He was the very first person that I ever told that I could walk.
Okay, so you told a stranger on the internet you could walk. But imagine, just imagine for a few moments, if you told someone closer, like other family members, doctors, social services, neighbors, the local kids you were friendly with, or simply called the cops and said, "Hey, I'm Gypsy Rose. My mom keeps me locked in the house all the time, pretends I'm crippled, but I'm really not." As opposed to talking to some random middle-aged dude on the internet that you've met at a comic book convention and who thinks you're a child, and then eventually moving on from him to conspire with someone else to murder your mom. Wow, what a sweet kid you are.
The age that my mother was telling me I was 15 at the time, and he was 36.
Nope. just nope, 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 nope.
And then I started dreaming about what it would be like if I was just a little bit older, because then I would be legal to date him if I wanted to.
What the hell is wrong with the producers of this show? You're playing some fairy tale-esque music while this woman, who is 19 but apparently believes she is 15, is fantasizing about a guy who is 36. And dude, Dan, whatever, if you're 36, why in the blue hell are you talking to a girl who believes she's 15 and presumably telling you that too? You're 36. Why would you be talking to someone that you believe is 15? I mean, hell, if you're 36, why are you talking to someone who's 19? What are you going to have in common?
I found my Medicaid card, and it said that my birth year was 1991. She had been claiming that it was 1995. I wasn't 15, that I was actually 19. I wish that I had stood up for myself more. The wheelchair was also part of the con.
None of that makes sense because it doesn't account for the repeated or backwards birthdays when you were re-celebrating birthdays you had in previous years, or that you realized the wheelchair was part of the con. You knew the wheelchair was part of the con. You could fucking walk. You admitted it. You told a guy on the internet who gave you tingly feelings that you could walk. You stepped up, allegedly, for a doctor and showed him you could stand. You could walk. But only now, after finding your Medicaid card, now you realize it was a con. Bullshit. Bullshit.
As long as there were programs for sick children, Dee Dee would receive SSI benefits for that. So I think it was very much financial as well as an emotional thing. If Gypsy left her, she would lose her life.
Yes, and probably her freedom too, because of the hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, gifts, assets, and whatever else that had been obtained by this long-running, deliberate con game.
So one night, when my mother was asleep, I stole my mother's cell phone from her purse, and I was texting with Dan. And he sent me a text that said, "Could tonight be the night that we run away together?"
It was late at night. It was about 2 a.m. and I hitchhiked to his friend's house. That's when he tells me that he was on parole and couldn't leave the state.
Parole, you say? Wonder what for? I mean, it probably wouldn't look good to his parole officer if he's talking to someone that he believes to be 15, discussing plans to run away and whatever else. The original crime might be completely unrelated to the current circumstances, but it doesn't surprise me at all that there is some rap sheet involved. I'd say truth is stranger than fiction, but this is literally a blend of the two. I mean, everything about this bitch is like a walking, talking Twilight Zone episode. And that wraps up episode 2, so thank you for sticking around. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm playing this slow and going through the backstory, mainly as it's constantly presented to the public first, before embarking on more of the deep dive into stuff that has not been presented. Consider it sort of a journey that people could and probably should take. But like a book, you kind of have to read it from start to finish rather than jumping in right at the end. Maybe this is something that will resonate with others new to Gypsy law and the learning curve. So again, I ask you to please bear with me. Everyone offering links and updates and what's going on in the here and now, I do appreciate, and I'm keeping it to one side, and I'll go over those at a later time. But please, drop a like, feel free to comment. All I ask is you keep it reasonably respectable because of the whole YouTube TOS thing, and I'd hate to see you getting hit with YouTube's burn hammer. And if you don't know the power of the dark side, give it a whirl and visit some of the channels linked in the description, including my main channel, Hatman, where I live stream on Friday nights and occasionally do gaming streams. Anyway, be good or not, and I'll see you next time. Laters.